Time for another ancient coin unboxing. Let's go! Alright, today's coins come from a recent auction I took part in. There was this really great selection of 2nd century denarii. I'm talking about the 2nd century AD, so these are Roman Imperial coins from the time of the 5 good emperors. This auction had a special focus on different portrait types. That's a part of Roman Imperial coinage that interests me a lot. The 2nd century was probably the golden age of Rome. Like, Rome had a lot of very good periods, but probably the 2nd century was the best. It was very stable politically. All of the emperors had very long reigns, so you can see them aging on the coins, and the style of the portraits changes as their reigns progress and new generations of die engravers take over the mint of Rome, so there's a lot of variety. Whoever sold their collection, this auction, had a surprisingly good eye for finding like minor varieties of the most typical portraits of these emperors. Another interesting quirk of 2nd century coinage is that coins not only show the emperors themselves, the imperial family at large was represented. There were many coins issued made for like their heirs, the Caesars, lots of coins issued for the empresses as well, deification issues for previous emperors. You're going to see that on the 3rd century as well, and maybe to a lesser extent in the 1st century, but the 2nd century really shows a lot of variety in people featured on the coins. It's an incredible time period, and it offers a more affordable alternative to the coins of the 1st century. The Flavians are from the 1st century are generally more expensive. Domitian not so much, but coins of Vespasian and Titus are definitely more expensive on average. And don't get me started on the Julio-Claudians. Their coins are generally very expensive and they've been rising like crazy in price. So I'm glad my favorite period is also one where the coins are much more abundant and affordable. This auction had a few very rare and expensive subtypes that went way beyond what I'm comfortable paying. It looks like I'm not the only one out there collecting portrait types. However, I think this was still a very interesting haul, so let me show you what I got. And by the way, make sure to leave in the comment section what coins have you been adding to your collection recently. I really enjoy reading your comments. And let's begin with Emperor Hadrian. We've got a couple of his denarii in this video. Hadrian is probably one of the emperors with the biggest number of portrait varieties, with and without a laurel crown, head facing left, head facing right, different types of draperies, cuirasses, simple head ones with different neck to head proportions. You really won't get bored collecting him. This first example we have here is from the middle of his reign, struck between 124 and 125. Very charming portrait. It looks like a plain head to me, but if you notice around the base of his neck, we have a small contour of his draperies, so this might qualify as a draped bust. Fairly well preserved coin as well, apart from a little wear on his beard and his ear, the two highest parts of the design. This is a coin in pretty great condition. The legends around the portrait also vary a lot during Hadrian's reign. And like, for example, his early coins have enormous titles. And this one is my favorite. It's the complete opposite. No unnecessarily long titles like Tribunicia Potestate Consul, Pater Patria, blah blah. It's a simple Hadrianus Augustus, unabbreviated. Very refreshing, very clean design. On the reverse we have Dea Roma, the personification of Rome itself. She's usually depicted as this somewhat belligerent deity. We can see by the crested helmet she's always wearing. She also holds a spear on her hand and a little victory on the other, more symbols of military triumph. Curiously, the years when this coin was struck, 124, 125, they were not particularly violent. I mean, in 122, Hadrian began the construction of his famous wall in the region of northern England, so Hadrian's Wall, of course. This is probably one of his most famous efforts to solidify the empire's borders. So this piece could plausibly be a reverse to commemorate the completion of the wall. Or this could just be a more generalized message of Rome as this all-seeing entity, like standing in guard with her spear, protecting the borders of this massive empire. Very fitting reverse type for Hadrian. The legends on the reverse are also very straightforward. Consul tertium, consul for the third time. We then go to this other denarius of Hadrian. Now, this one is a late one, struck between 134 and 138, so the last 4 years of his reign. Now we have an important change in tone with this portrait. A more austere expression. He's clearly wearing his battle cuirass. Generally his cuirass portraits are shown with the paludamentum, which is a cape that covers the cuirass, but in this case, the cape has been removed. So it's an intentional move to show he is dressed up for battle. We can see the two flaps of fabric that went over his shoulder and they were attached to his lorica musculata, his cuirass. Now we have more official titles in this obverse as well. Apart from the Hadrianus Augustus, we also have Consul Tertium and the Pater Patriae, Father of the Nation. Now, I think I understand why this coin changes to a much more serious note. This coin was struck either in the later stages or immediately after the violent Bar Kokhba revolt, also known as the Second Jewish Revolt. Very brutal and bloody affair. The Roman population of Judea was first massacred by Simon Bar Kokhba's troops, then Hadrian marched on Judea with around a third of all of Rome's armies at the time, and he massacred the Jewish population in revenge. Hadrian himself commanded the Roman army, at least for the initial part of the campaign. He was a very capable general, and the reverse of this coin celebrates Hadrian's return to Rome after the campaign. We have Fortuna Reduci, the fortune that favors a safe return. Traveling in the ancient world always involved a certain risk. Even if you were the emperor, ships could sink, disease was always a possibility, so whenever the emperor came back to Rome after such campaigns, coins were issued celebrating his safe return. We can see a seated image of Fortuna. She holds a cornucopia, the horn of abundance, but she also controls a rudder, the rudder of a ship, symbolizing she controlled the destiny of those traveling in life. In this case, probably she looks relaxed on her throne, so probably she was giving Hadrian her blessings for a safe and uneventful return back home. And for our third coin, we have Trajan, the Optimus Princeps. I'm showing the reverse first because I actually got this coin for the reverse. I've recently made a video on the commemorative coins issued by Trajan, and I realized I was lacking a coin celebrating the Dacian Wars. Well, I have one of Trajan's column. It's probably one of my favorite coins. However, I also really enjoyed the Dacia Capta types, featuring a seated Dacian captive. It's a much more overt show-off, like Roman military might. There are quite a few subtypes, with the captive like near a pile of weapons, two captives, the captive by himself. In this particular type, we have it seated next to a trophy. The trophy was an offering the Romans made to the gods when they won a battle. They gathered some of the best arms and armor of the defeated enemies, organized it in a nice sculpture, and left it on the battlefield as an offering to the gods. On the legends we can read Senatus Populusque Romanus Optimo Principi, or the best princeps, the best emperor of the Senate and the people of Rome. A special honorary title given by the Senate to Trajan because, well, he was doing such a good job at being emperor. As for the obverse, the portrait is actually pretty typical for an early to mid part of his reign. We have Trajan's bust. He isn't wearing any special kinds of attire in these types, it's just his head. And I think this is probably like the second main type of portrait of Trajan. This coin is dated between 103 and 107 AD. There's an earlier type of portrait found in his first coins between 99 and 101, which actually doesn't look a whole lot like Trajan's real appearance. Maybe the die engravers weren't used to making his portrait, but this second type we have here already shows a portrait much more in line with what we know Trajan looked like from his marble portraits. He wears a laurel crown, of course, he was the emperor, and we have some very long legends, another hallmark of Trajan's coins. Imperator Traiano Augusto Germanicus Dacicus Pontifex Maximus Tribunicia Potestate Consul Quintum Pater Patriae. The more we move forwards towards the end of his reign, the more titles he adds to his coins. So if you think this coin is a mouthful, you should see his very last issues after he defeated the Parthians. These are like comically long. And for the last denarius of the day, we have an empress. This is Faustina II, the wife of Emperor Marcus Aurelius and daughter of his predecessor, Antoninus Pius. Sadly, this is not a very happy coin. This is a posthumous denarius, struck in 176, mourning the passing of the empress, but celebrating her deification. If Faustina was deserving of being deified, it is certainly up for debate. There are some curious reports from her time that claim she was unfaithful to the emperor, that she wasn't necessarily the most pleasant or magnanimous of individuals, which is very surprising because it seems like her father and her husband were men of very pleasant character. Now, I'm not going to be the one to judge her. We might never know the answer because we know there was a lot of propaganda and tainting of reputations going on in ancient Rome. However, if there's one thing we can say positively about her is that she carried out her duties as a wife for Marcus in a very good way, at least in the reproductive sense. She gave Marcus over 10 children. The fact one of such children was the next emperor, Commodus, wasn't necessarily ideal, but hey, she didn't know back then she was giving birth to such a terrible guy. On this denarius, which has this delightful dark cabinet patina, we have the portrait of Faustina looking to the right. We can see the top part of the dress she's wearing. We also see her long hair is braided with the excess neatly tied to a bun on the back of her head. And on the legends, we can read Diva Faustina Pia, so to the diva, to the goddess Faustina, and then Pia, the dutiful, the blessed. On the reverse, we have an empty chair. It's more like a throne. It's quite an elaborate throne. On the backrest, we can see its top section is decorated with some rounded ornaments, and where she sits, there is what looks like a series of blankets and cushions. Definitely a very comfortable throne for an empress. On it, we have a scepter, like an abandoned scepter, so an indication that she once occupied that throne, and now it is empty. It sends this image of something that is absent. And under it, we have a peacock. In posthumous coins, the image of the deified emperor was generally represented with the eagle. The eagle was, of course, sent by Jupiter, the king of the gods, to ascend the new deified emperor to godhood. Empresses were also shown on eagles, but it was more common to use the peacock to represent them. If you've seen a peacock before, you know it's this gorgeous bird with like this massive tail full of colors. It has an air of majesty to it, which fits the concept of the empress very well. Around the design, we have the legends. Consecratio, so a reinforcement of Faustina's consecration. And here's today's little surprise, Dupondius. I didn't buy this one at the auction where I acquired the other pieces. This was a private sale, but this is such a great looking coin that I just had to share it with you. A Dupondius is a coin of relatively low value. It's worth 2 copper asses, so you needed 8 of these in exchange for 1 denarius. It isn't made out of copper though, it is brass. This coin has a dark patina over it, however when it was new, it would have had a golden color to it. That's why the Romans called it orichalcum. This was originally like a Greek word that the Romans sort of transliterated, with auri, the first part coming from the Roman word for gold, aureus, and chalcum coming from the Greek chalkos. So something like coppery golden copper. You get my idea. And as we can see on the obverse, it is yet another Hadrian. Antoninus Pius used to be the most common coin in my collection, but he needs to watch out. I'm buying too many Hadrians. So, this piece is from the middle of his reign, between 124 and 127. It reads once again, Adrianus Augustus, the short legends I particularly like. Sadly, this coin was struck a little bit off-center, so the Augustus at the right is out of the flan. However, check this out. What a lovely coin. So substantial on hand. It weighs 14 grams and it is thick. These larger flans allowed die engravers to put a lot more detail on the portraits, so we can see a lot of intricacies in this bust. You know, like his wavy hair, we can appreciate the volume on his face and his cheeks much better as well because of the size. And notice the radiate crown on his head, like this spiky crown. This was one of the ways to tell apart the Dupondius from the ass. The ass normally had the laurel crown, the one with the leaves. Hadrian, however, liked to innovate things. He made it a little bit more complicated for us numismatists. He issued a lot of coins with his head without any kind of headdress, so no laurel crown or radiate crowns. In this case, the best way to distinguish a Dupondius from an ass is to look at the edge of the coin. If they look square like this, I mean, how can I explain it? Imagine a piece of salami and you cut like a thick slice. Doesn't it look like a square edge? You know, it's gonna have that sharp square edge. That's typical for the Dupondi. As for the ass, on the other hand, it's like a thinner edge. The coin tapers down to like what you see on ancient coins normally. On the reverse, which sadly is a little bit worn, we have an image of Equitas, the goddess of equality. I mean, we know the Roman world wasn't famous for its equality among its people. You know, slavery and all that. The Equitas the Romans mention here in this coin has more to do with maybe the legal aspect of it. Roman citizens were protected under the law, and they had a surprisingly complex system of laws for an ancient society. It's no surprise that most of the modern codes of law of Western nations are deeply influenced by Roman law. Equitas here holds on one hand a set of scales, once more that idea of justice, and on the other, the cornucopia, the horn of abundance. The idea that this complex legal system provided a base for Roman society to work, and with this legal framework, it was possible to have a prosperous society, hence the cornucopia, where grain and like an endless flow of like food and grain would spill out from. I mean, and the Romans enjoyed a lot of prosperity, and they enjoyed a lot of equality under the law in a sense. Well, at least for part of its society. The legends read Consul Tertium, and the SC stands for Senatus Consulto, meaning this coin was issued under the authority of the Roman Senate, and this coin was supposed to be accepted on markets for its value stipulated by law, despite the coin itself not having any precious metal content and being a purely fiduciary coin. And here we have it, yet another fun unboxing. Do you have any coins you added to your collection recently? Let us know in the comment section down below. I hope you enjoyed this episode, leave a like and consider subscribing if you did, and I'll see you soon. Let me give a special thank you to all of my amazing channel members and Patreons for their generous support. This channel would not be the same without your help. And if you would like to be part of this list, have early access to my videos when they are uploaded to YouTube, and a series of other perks, make sure to check out my Patreon page and my members tab on YouTube. Thank you very much.